So good evening, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to the Friends of Astrology meeting for Friday, February 11th, 2022. And this evening, the Friends of Astrology presents Super Bowl Sports Astrology with Andrea Mallis. Sports astrology is a unique niche and blends two of her passions, astrology and sports. It provides valuable information for athletes in all levels of team management. Timing is everything, and as she illuminates mental, emotional, and the physical game. While the old paradigm is based on past performance, sports astrology is based on future performance and can impart a unique competitive advantage. Another tool in the toolkit. She's like a cosmic umpire, and she gets the most of the calls. She gets most of the calls right. Andrea is currently the Sports Sorceress on Fox Sports Radio, Sirius 83, the Ben Mahler Show, and has appeared on ESPN and CBS News Sunday morning and was featured in the New York Times sports section. She'll be sharing Super Bowl 56 sports astrology as the Los Angeles Rams and Cincinnati Bengals will play on Super Bowl Sunday, February 13th, 2022 in Inglewood, Los Angeles, California at SoFi Stadium at 3:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Again, she has appeared on ESPN Sports Center, ESPN News, ESPN2, Cold Pizza, and Baseball Tonight. She's appeared on Comcast Sportsnet, now NBC Sports Bay Area and NBC Sports California. Wow, she's been on several news outlets, as we can see. I would even highlight Sirius XM satellite radio and served as an astrologer on ESPN All Night Radio. Sam Walker, a Wall Street Journal sports writer, highlighted Andrea in his book on fantasy baseball, quote unquote, Fantasy Island. Andrea's unique work is featured in the San Francisco Chronicle, Oakland Tribune, Chicago Tribune, and Sun-Times, USA Today, Los Angeles Times, New York Magazine, Sports Illustrated, and most recently, the New York Times sports section. Please visit Andrea's website at www.virgoinservice.com. So with that, everyone, let's welcome Andrea Mallis.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And Pamela Colcott will switch the screen and upload the screen, and want to say hello to Susan. Welcome, Susan. Hey, Peter, welcome.
Hey, Omari, nice to see you.
Likewise.
Hello.
Hey, Mary Beth. Oh, and also everyone, if you have questions, please feel free to type your questions in the chat pod. I'm watching the chat pod closely. And at certain points, Andrea, if you could pause to see if there are any questions, that'll be perfect.
Sure.
Okay, so we're ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right, all yours, Andrea.
Okay, well, thank you. Really look forward to being of astrological service, and takes a village. Thank you, Pamela, Omari, everyone who helped get this presentation together. And yeah, we got Super Bowl 56 on the horizon. And that is this Sunday, February 13th, 2022, 3:30 p.m., Inglewood, California. So we have a Sun-Saturn conjunction in Aquarius, Mercury-Pluto conjunction in Capricorn. That's been going on and off through several weeks, which is intensity there. Venus and Mars conjunct in Capricorn as well. And Mercury is still in its shadow period. I wanted to mention that. I have these Mercury retrograde bookmarks I give out and put on my website. And Mercury is retrograde January 14th to February 3rd, but it doesn't leave the shadow period till the end of this month. So I think that's interesting. So it's not at full strength, but for all intents and purposes, it's out of retrograde. And it's going into Aquarius February 14th. And Leo rising, that's dramatic, okay. Cancer moon, some emotional energy there. Eccentric, Sun conjunct Saturn, Sun in Aquarius. February 25th, Mercury's out of its shadow and back to 100% strength. So that's good to know. Venus was also retrograde. The end of December, I think the 21st, till the end of January. So that's nice that, kind of is no longer retrograde. All the planets are full steam straight ahead, no retrogrades. And what I do is really compare and contrast the athletes' charts. I do coaches and I do the quarterbacks. And I look at their charts with the outer wheel of the Super Bowl as their transits. And I also run their progressions. But please bear in mind, except for Tom Brady, I don't have accurate birth times. But I think I told Pamela that Giselle is super into astrology, and a colleague of mine is her astrologer. So she's very tuned in. So I have Tom Brady's birth date and time, but we'll get to him later with the retirement. Yes, no, maybe so. But, the matters at hand, more the Super Bowl. So I thought we can start with Matthew Stafford, the quarterback for the LA Rams. And he just had his birthday, February 7, 1988, born in Tampa, Florida. And interesting, he is 18 degrees Aquarius, and Saturn is 17 degrees Aquarius. And I know Saturn gets a bad rap, but I was talking to my colleague Cesar, and Saturn also brings rewards for people that have been working really hard. So athletes definitely know how to channel that. So Saturn is conjuncting his sun. So I wrote extra responsibilities, putting in building blocks for your future. So I actually like Saturn conjuncting his sun. I mean, it got him this far. It's a cosmic cup of the zodiac. If you haven't been disciplined, there's limitations, there's karma. But it can also bring rewards to those who work diligently. So I'm liking Saturn conjunct his sun. Mercury will conjunct his sun in March. So that's a little bit later. That's good for communication. So that was just something about Saturn conjunct the sun and progressed sun sextile Jupiter. Let's have a little Jupiter. Let's lighten things up, shall we? February 12th to the 14th. And that's progressed sun sextile Jupiter. As you know, Jupiter is like the Santa Claus of the zodiac, makes things bigger, more, and better. So benefits from authority, benefits from those in authority, progressed sun sextile Jupiter. And the progressed wheel is the third part of the tri-wheel. So his progressed sun is 22, looks like Pisces, and his Jupiter, let me turn over the page, when he was born was, let's see, I'm looking at his Jupiter, okay, 24 Aries. So progressed sun sextile Jupiter, February 12th to the 14th, nice timing on that. So I'm liking, that level. Jupiter, Trine, Pluto. Let's give another shout out to Jupiter, expansion, abundance, Pluto power, February 19th to the 27th. And then progressed sun sextile Saturn, Uranus conjunction. He's born during the Saturn, Uranus. And that is, just as you would think, good for focus and intensity. And I love that the sun for Super Bowl Sunday is right on his Mercury. Did you see that? That's kind of easy. His sun, transiting sun in 29 Aquarius, is conjunct his Mercury. 25 Aquarius, rather. So what do you think? You got to think on your feet when you're a quarterback. So that's really good for communication. So I'm liking that quite a bit. And Pluto sextile Venus, February, that's nice for prizes and accolades, attention, affection, certainly. So I was liking his chart for several reasons. The mental clarity, the sun in Aquarius connecting to his Mercury, that happens every year around this time. And Jupiter trine Pluto, which is really good for power and confidence. And progress Sun sextile Saturn focus. So I'm liking his chart quite a bit. That's obviously a big part of it, not the only part, but a big part. Then Sean McVay, he's so funny. I saw an interview with him today. And these are very young coaches in the Super Bowl, I should mention. McVay, January 24, 86. And his voice was really raspy. And he said, I know, I sound like an old FM radio host. He made that connection. Dayton, Ohio. So he's an Aquarius like Matthew. And as you know, Aquarius kind of thinks outside the box, a little eccentric, unusual. So some unusual game planning, experimental, unorthodox, certainly progressive, freedom loving. And he's having a Mercury return. So let's hear it for Mercury. Mercury is 29 Capricorn for the Super Bowl. And let's see where I saw the Mercury return. His Mercury is 29 Capricorn. Yeah. So it's very, yeah, is that correct? Yeah, he's having a Mercury return. So again, for strategizing, right off the bat, a great benefit for strategizing and having a Mercury return about once a year. So really good for expressing himself, communicating, making a compelling case, accomplishing a lot. He also has Sun, progressed Sun square Mars. So I don't really see that as a bad thing, but I certainly see some ego conflicts. Progressed Sun, 10 Pisces, and his Mars is, let's see, is 24 Scorpio. Progressed Sun, transiting Sun, 25 Aquarius, squaring his Mars at 24 Scorpio, not a progression, a transit. The tri-wheels get a little confusing, especially when you don't have an accurate birth time, but I never like to miss, like if the sun progresses into another sign and it's like a major shift, but I don't micromanage too much with the progressions without an accurate birth time. So, keep it simple. 25 degrees Aquarius on Super Bowl Sunday. His Jupiter is 23 degrees Aquarius. So we like Sun conjunct Jupiter. Too bad it only happens once a year, right? Bring it on. And then Mercury to the Sun, and then Mercury to Venus. I always kind of project a little ahead. I don't know if other astrologers do, but I see, how will the transits look for the parade if and when they win? I mean, goddess only knows if they're having parades these days or it'll be Zoom or virtual. But I always like to kind of project ahead beyond the Super Bowl and see how their charts look to get some accolades. So I'm definitely liking that. And new concepts, Saturn sextile Uranus. And, just like making dreams a reality. Saturn conjuncting Jupiter later on in the year. And Pluto conjuncting his Mercury, April, May as well. So intense communication, April, Jupiter trine his Mars. So he's having some really nice transits post Super Bowl, which I kind of also indicate can be a good sign for being abundant and prosperity conscious. And, Mercury is just really important for a coach, as you can well imagine, because what are they doing but like barking orders and strategizing and, thinking on their feet and getting things done. And there was only some confusion, Neptune square Uranus. But here's what I would say. Outer planet to outer planet, I don't put as much stock in. Now, I don't know if other astrologers are, similarly inclined, but that's sort of what I do. I don't put that much stock in outer planet to outer planet, but Neptune, transiting Neptune is square his Uranus, February 7th to the 11th, which can cause some confusion. But all in all, positive Mercury transits, positive Mars transits, the strategy, the Mercury return, double whammy, Sun to his Mercury, Mercury return. I mean, this is someone who's going to really have some doors open here and be able to communicate really very adeptly. So that is something I'm definitely liking for his Super Bowl Sunday chart. And what's interesting, the LA Rams, and thank you, Pamela, for putting up all these charts. The midheaven of the LA Rams is 16 degrees Aquarius, right where Saturn is transiting. So again, to me, I think Saturn can be rather favorable. So transiting Saturn conjuncts the midheaven of the LA Rams Incorporation chart. And this would be a good time to give a shout out to my colleague, Cesar Love, who does a lot of work with incorporation charts. I've looked at them before, but never really fine-tuned them. And the fact that he pointed out transiting Saturn is right on the midheaven of the LA Rams incorporation chart. And obviously they moved to St. Louis and so forth, but their incorporation chart, I have April 12, 1936, 7:45 a.m., Los Angeles, California. So I really like that transit there. And, just think if they were a person at that age, having a Pluto opposition and a Uranus return. So these are very significant transits that the organization is having. So I do like to look at incorporation charts. And Cesar has a book, he can share the, I think it's called Baseball and Astrological Sightline, where he looks at all the incorporation charts and how they compare and contrast with players, coaches, managers. It's really quite revealing. And as I said before, like another tool in the tool bag. You don't want to have too much information. I can Virgo out and, paralysis of analysis. But I do think the incorporation charts for sports astrology are very important to look at as well. So I like that Super Bowl LA Rams chart, and that's just part of that. So I'll mention that chart. And then we can just, and I'll come back with more information and take questions. I just want to make sure there's plenty of time with the computer situation. Okay, so let's shift gears. I was thinking of Joe Burrow. Let's shift gears to Joe Burrow, December 10, 1996. So he's a youngin, Ames, Iowa. So what's really interesting, he has got this incredible Sagittarius swagger. Has anyone seen interviews with him online on, NFL Network, ESPN? He is a piece of work. So, he really embodies that archetype, and, he gets like dressed up and he's young and, he's really playful, and, give him credit. He was rehabbing a lot of knee injuries last year. So, to be like 25 again, when you just heal up really quick. So he's got that Sagittarius swagger. Now, what's really interesting, and he's a case in point, Mars is a crucial planet for an athlete. It rules energy, assertion, and aggression. So he's got Mars in Virgo, 20 degrees. Guess what? Neptune is opposing his Mars. That I'm not so crazy about. Frankly, I'm really glad he made it this far. I mean, that's the athlete competitive edge. And he has, transits don't occur in a vacuum. So he has other transits, mitigating that or, offsetting it to some degree. But as you know, as astrologers, that's not necessarily the most robust and strong transit. And it's a long-term transit, started last year with his injuries and knee surgeries.
Oh, wow.
And he won Comeback Player of the Year. So did some due diligence there. And they usually say you have trouble fulfilling your desires during Neptune opposed Mercury. I mean, he didn't look insecure or timid to me. If you saw any of those interviews, that's part of the game. But he was just like, the bigger the better, freedom loving, adventurous, just really super positive about it, very visionary. So that's Neptune opposed Mars, we got to put it in the context, but that was not my favorite transit to see, but by the same token, he's been laboring under that for a while. So it's not like it's going to hit him out of the blue. And he's going to have Neptune oppose Mars, who turned out the lights. You know, he's going to be familiar with that kind of on again, off again energy. And as I said, transits don't occur in a vacuum. So with some Neptune transits, I kind of cut to the chase and I say it's a 3Ds. And if it's a difficult opposition or square, can bring disappointment, disillusionment, dispiriting. So that's just something, but again, he's already familiar with that transit. And then he has Jupiter sextiling his Mercury, which is really good for quick thinking. So QBs need quick thinking. So Jupiter making a harmonious aspect to his Mercury. And to me, sextiles are not as strongly felt as, say, a conjunction or an opposition or a square, but nonetheless, it's still quite positive. So that is something to keep in mind. And then Mercury conjuncting his Neptune. Okay, on the day of the Super Bowl. So what I would say to that is there's a whole lot of Neptune going on. That would not be one of my more favorable transits for Super Bowl Sunday for your QB. I mean, on one hand, maybe they can be creative and artistic and think outside the box, but on another level, there might be some confusion there. So kind of dreamy. And then we have Neptune trine his Venus, February 7th to the end of the month, pleasurable activities. So Neptune in Pisces trining his Venus in Scorpio. So Neptune trine Venus, that is a very nice transit. And it's, you know, long term, the outer planets like Neptune move a degree or two a year and they retrograde. So that's a nice transit. I thought I'd mention that. It looks like he's enjoying that. Pleasurable. And then progressed Mars opposed Saturn. That sounded a little more serious. Okay, so let's find progressed Mars. Okay, and that is, looks like 0 degrees. Oh yeah, there it is. Thank you. Okay, and it is, progressed Mars opposing Saturn. Oh, okay, so progressed Mars about to go, oh yeah, in Libra, his Saturn is 0, Aries. Okay, that again, you know, depends how you kind of integrate Saturn. Could be building blocks for the future, increased responsibility. But if I had to be, you know, hard pressed to say what aspect are you most concerned about, I would say transiting Neptune opposes Mars, because Mars is such a crucial planet for an athlete. And if I may, I just hearken back to when Barry Zito, one of my favorite Oakland A's pitchers, pitched for the A's. And he has Mars in Leo. We didn't really do much with his chart, but just as an aside, when Neptune was in Aquarius several years ago, when he was traded to the Giants or requested to go to the Giants, they paid him like 120 million, something really outrageous. Transiting Neptune was opposing his Mars. And as you may know, he didn't have like the best long-term success with them. I mean, they did win the World Series, which is all they, you know, we seem to care about during the even years, 2010, 2012, 2014. And that was, he was injury prone. He had, you know, Paris Hilton, you know, he was just like nebulous and in la la land, and he's a Taurus. But when Neptune opposed his Mars in Leo, like all bets were off. It was like, wait a minute, he was 23-5 with the A's. He won the Cy Young. Why is he like under 500 and his ERA is almost 5? You know, you're not going to bring the same person when you cross the bridge. You bring your current transit. So that's just my little aside. And he was very open to astrology. His mom and dad, I used to sit in the stands at the Oakland Coliseum and share Barry's chart with his mom. The dad wasn't interested. He was a Virgo. He had like a loose leaf binder, and he wrote down every pitch Barry would throw. And he's like, no, excuse me, ladies, I'll see you later. And I would talk astrology to his mom. Those were really fun years in the early 2000s when I started doing some sports astrology. So anyway, and Alex Smith, again, in the interest of time, he didn't do too much with his chart, but he had some challenging Mars aspects as well. And we all see what happened to him. So Zach Taylor, the coach, thank you. May 10, 1983, Norman, Oklahoma. Okay, Sun square Mars. Okay, then that will fire someone up. Okay, pushy a little bit, but that's part of the job. So transiting Sun, squaring his Mars, February 13th to the 15th. Look at that. And frankly, I think you feel Mars transits before. So even though it says it starts on the 13th, I mean, at least for me personally, I feel it several degrees, several days before. I give it an orb of like 4 or 5 degrees sometimes. It can really, get your dander up. So that is transiting Sun squares Mars. Okay, Saturn squaring his Sun. We have Saturn in Aquarius squaring his Sun in Taurus. So that can bring delays, February 17th to December 2022. Testing time, the drill, extra responsibilities. Might feel like you're going through an endurance test. So that's some Saturn aspects. And what's interesting, all these charts in my head, Trey Lance, who's supposed to take over for Jimmy Garoppolo of the 49ers, he's a Taurus. I want to say like May 8th or so, 2000. He's super young. And he was having Saturn squares Taurus planets, Uranus opposes Taurus planets, and we'll segue into Jimmy Garoppolo, who is a poster child for the Saturn-Uranus square. But a little more on Zach Taylor. Mercury square Saturn, February 13th to the 15th, frustrating communication, some pessimism and gloomy thinking. Mercury square Saturn. Okay, so Mercury is, okay, let's see, Mercury will be in, just looking at the chart. Okay, 29 Cap, it goes to Aquarius the next day. And it's squaring his Saturn at 29, looks like Libra. So Saturn, Mercury, Saturn, not exactly super expansive thinking. Mercury trine Mars, okay, till February 10th, right before the Super Bowl. So that's a lot of get up and go. But Saturn square Sun, I'm not crazy about squares, maybe because I have one in my chart of Saturn square Sun. Actually, full disclosure, I have a T-square to Saturn. Okay, yeah. So Saturn is also squaring his Mercury in March, which can be like serious communication and challenging communication with others. So remember, I project out a little bit past the Super Bowl to kind of get a feel of how they'll feel after. And sometimes when I see some challenging transits, it looks a little more challenging. On a more positive note, progressed Sun trining his Pluto. And that is transformation. Sometimes Taurus doesn't like to make changes. Not sometimes, most of the time I have Taurus rising. So I think, that's sort of the basics of his chart, mostly Saturn square Sun, progressed Sun square Mars, which can be pushy and ego conflicts. I remember during one of the Super Bowls when it was Mercury was retrograde, the Janis Joplin, I digress, giving my age away, Janet Jackson. Remember all the replays they had during Mercury retrograde, the wardrobe malfunction. So I thought that was quite interesting. I just thought I'd mention that. But Mercury's out of retrograde, it's just in its shadow point. But Zach Taylor's having some challenging Mercury transits. I think he's just kind of obsessed with his ideas. And Saturn square Sun, that's just a testing time. And that could be somewhat challenging. Progressed Sun to Pluto can offset it, but progressions to me are the third part of the equation. So natal on the inside, transits on the second bi-wheel, and then progressions on the outer wheel. So that's the hierarchy of importance that I use. Okay, and then Jupiter squared Jupiter. Okay, so he's definitely, happy to be there. And the Cincinnati Bengals, we'll take a look at their chart. And let's see, I think you have that handy. Let me know. Okay. Ray Stafford. Okay, all right. So the Bengals, thank you. May 24, 1967. I just used 12 p.m. if we don't have an exact time. Cincinnati. Oh, maybe we do have an exact time. Cincinnati, Ohio. I guess a lot of places might incorporate around noon, sun at the midheaven on the 10th house of career. So that's the Bengals chart. Sag moon, born on the full moon, sun in Gemini, moon in Sag, Leo rising. So, they certainly have their swagger as well. And, that's interesting to a point to see their incorporation chart and maybe some transits to it. And then the other charts that are quite intriguing, Jimmy Garoppolo and Kyle Shanahan of the 49ers. And I also want to mention, oh yeah, there he is. Thank you. Okay, Patrick Mahomes, we'll do him later. Okay, so as I was saying, kind of tongue in cheek, that Jimmy Garoppolo is like the poster child for the Saturn-Uranus square. And as you may know, he's been incredibly and unfortunately injury prone. So let's get his birth date, November 2nd, 1991, Arlington Heights, Illinois. And I was trying to remember, obviously when he came to the 49ers, it was like literally on Halloween, like, October 31st, about 5 years ago, right on the cusp of his birthday. He's November 2nd. So that was like a big shift, leaving the New England Patriots, where he was like Tom Brady's understudy, to come to the 49ers and be the quarterback. And unfortunately, it's not like he hasn't had some good games, but the injury bug has really plagued him. He's got a stellium in Scorpio. Look at that chart. That is something. Hello. Sun conjunct Mercury, Mars, Pluto, and Venus. Oh no, he has Venus in Virgo. Hold on, let me double check that. That's Pallas Athene. I use the asteroids, but not so much in transiting aspects. Okay, Sun in 9 Scorpio, Mars at 11 Scorpio, so Sun conjunct Mars, Pluto at 19 Scorpio, and Mercury at 26 Scorpio. So 4 planets, a stellium, 3 or more planets in, similar degrees, stellium in Scorpio. And what I personally love is the stellium in Virgo. I really like well, we don't know the exact degree of the moon without an accurate birth time, but looks like moon in Virgo, 17 degrees, right in the middle, moves a degree every 2 hours. Jupiter, 9 degrees Virgo, and Venus, 22 Virgo. So Neptune opposing Venus, again, that's more personal. So I don't really belabor the point with, like a Venus transit, but that can be some disappointment. But what I was mostly concerned about, and I'm sure he was, is Uranus opposed Sun, Uranus opposed Mars, and the injuries that he sustained. I mean, no one said being a quarterback is easy, but that was, above and beyond some of those hits that he took, and he was out. And he played through the thumb injury. He might end up having surgery on that, and the shoulder. He really kind of took a lick and kept on taking. He was really kind of ironic with Mars for outer planet connections, so they take a longer time. Okay, then Saturn square the Sun and Mars. As you know, Saturn in Aquarius was squaring his Sun and Mars. That is the skeletal system. It rules bones, knees, teeth, joint, back, you name it. So those areas were vulnerable. So like I said, he was a poster boy for the Saturn-Uranus square by virtue of having a stellium in Scorpio, Uranus opposing it, Saturn in Aquarius squaring it. So he, they lost to the Rams and they did not make it to the Super Bowl. And those were the transits. And then on a happier note, Jupiter in Pisces trining his sun. So, some consolation there. But for the NFC Championship game, progressed Sun square Mars, high energy, but frustration. And if anyone saw the last play of the NFC Championship game with the 49ers versus the Rams, that was an exercise in futility. I mean, they wanted, I'm in the Bay Area, they wanted his head, for throwing that interception. So unfortunately, his transits were quite volatile. And, Jupiter trine Sun, that gives him some consolation. And no, there's a lot of talk that Trey Lance will take over at some point, but he's a lot younger and a lot more experienced. And then for the championship game, NFC, January 30th, progressed Sun square Sun. So progressed Sun squaring his Sun may feel blocked, restless, and challenges. So progressed Sun, okay, that's progressed into 9 Sag, and his Saturn, let's see, progressed Sun is 9 Sag. His Saturn is, looks like early degrees Aquarius. So I'm not sure about that. Or maybe it's transiting Sun to the Sun. Oh, that's right, Aquarius. I'm sorry, not a progression. The Sun was in Aquarius January 30th, squaring his Sun in Scorpio. So Sun square Sun, again, not the most influential transit, but that also means the Sun was squaring his Mars, which can bring some frustrations. So, it just really, that Saturn Uranus square was just really tough. And then Saturn started squaring his Mercury. So that was kind of depressing. He may or may not admit to that. But Uranus opposed Mars, again, you may feel like circumstances are poised to destroy everything you've worked for. And I don't, and that's injury prone. I mean, you get a volatile planet like Uranus and Mars, again, energy, assertion, and aggression for an athlete. So that's like a recipe for, what's that word? It's like an accident waiting to happen. So that's just something to think about. Astrology is a permission giver, so I'd say the narrative, you can kind of see where he was coming from, where he was laboring from, what was sustainable, what wasn't, and the takeaway was that Saturn Uranus square and his charts by degree really caught up in that. So that, it's just really good to see. I think it was Ben Maller that would say the more interesting topic is in the losing locker room. So sometimes you see really the sense of frustration and you look to the transits in the losing locker room and see what's what. So, looking ahead, April, whenever they start up, there's the combine and so on, Jupiter trine Mercury. He can rebound. He'll land on his feet if he gets traded to another team. I know they're on the hook for like 21 million if he stays, but like 1.5 if he goes. So, there's above my pay grade. There's a lot of moving parts with him. But Saturn square Mercury was difficult for him as well. And then Neptune opposed Venus was sort of like a longing. It didn't work out. But Saturn in Aquarius squaring his Mercury in Scorpio was kind of a buzzkill. So, that was, I like him. I really enjoyed his energy and going to think good thoughts for him, but those were tough transits to navigate and be under the bright lights of a stage. Okay, Kyle Shanahan, all right, the coach of the 49ers, December 14, 79, Minneapolis, Minnesota. And you might know that his father, I think it was Mike Shanahan, was a coach as well. So he's got that Sagittarian optimism. In fact, Sun conjunct Neptune, real tight, thank you, in Sag. So on a good day, very spiritual, very intuitive. However, Neptune in Pisces is squaring his Sun and his Neptune. So chronologically, he's having, the midlife crisis, but it's added to it that transiting Neptune squares his Sun as well. So that's like an additional kind of double whammy there of disappointment and some disillusionment. So that was just, they didn't quite get, they got that far and they started like 3 and 5. So give them credit where credit's due. And then Jupiter opposed his Mars. Jupiter in Pisces opposes Mars. This was the NFC Championship game as well, January 30th, 2022, against the Rams, 3 p.m., Inglewood, California. So sometimes oppositions, can be a little explosive. but mostly I'd attribute the Neptune square Sun to the confusion, and the Neptune square Neptune is the generational midlife crisis. So that was kind of Kyle's chart. And then Patrick Mahomes, we want to look at Patrick. Okay, my Virgo birthday twin, different year, of course, but September 17th, 1995, Tyler, Texas. Well, I can certainly attest to transiting Neptune opposed the Sun. I also have it opposing my Mercury and the technical difficulties, but be that as it may, transiting Neptune opposed the Sun, just as you would imagine, the Sun's your basic vitality. And Neptune can be some confusion and feeling dispirited and defeated. And my colleague Cesar said, when you saw that last picture of him when they lost, it was the heartbreak of defeat. You just felt sad for him that Neptune opposed his Sun, because, you know, they won the year before or the year before that. But the Neptune opposed Sun, again, that's a long-term transit. So ultimately, in terms of being more vulnerable and just not having that level of detachment, just feeling very suffering acutely over unfulfilled hopes and disillusionment. So feeling life is unreasonable, just too hard, and feeling a little tired. I should mention that Neptune opposed the Sun can be rather enervating. And that's a word you don't want to necessarily hear with an athlete. So, you know, good to channel it into spiritual experiences and opportunities. You know, there's no way out but through, so you can take the high road and do more spiritual things. And I think he's married to his partner's a Virgo woman. They have a little Aquarius baby. You know, he's got some other nice things going on in his life, but this is a 2-year period, just to be clear, when Neptune opposes your Sun, that it's not just like, well, that was a rough summer. You know, this is a 2-year period. So you just question, you know, accomplishment, your achievement, what's gone wrong. Especially Virgo, I'm sure he's really, how shall I say, giving himself a hard time. So needless to say, business dealings, not the best. Things of that nature, but good for astrology, yoga, tarot, metaphysics, esoteric sciences. So he can channel it into something more spiritual, but I know as a fellow Virgo how very, very disappointed he was that they didn't advance. So Neptune, more vulnerable, moody, judgment can be faulty, disappointed with your efforts. And then Neptune is conjuncting his Saturn. So let's, yeah, thank you, Pamela. You're right on top of things. Excellent. So Neptune, okay, opposing his Sun. Neptune conjunct Saturn. What do we know about Neptune? It dissolves things. What do we know about Saturn? That it's supposed to be structure. So how disorienting. Neptune conjunct Saturn. Oh, okay. So my power source is getting a little low. Okay. So let's see. I have Tom Brady next. So what do you suggest?
Okay, so do you think this is a point where we can maybe take a quick pause? The group can have some reflections while you make the transition.
Okay, or should I just say Tom Brady in case we get cut off?
Oh, so if your power source runs out, is that when you're going to go to your neighbors?
Yes. He said he should be home after 6.
Okay, well then continue.
Okay, and then if I get cut off, then I'll be at my neighbors and then we'll hopefully connect back on. And is there a phone number I can call in just in case?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I'll send it to you via email.
Okay, but in case I don't have power, I might not have the email.
Okay, got it. Sorry, I wasn't thinking. Here, let me type it in the chat pod for you.
Okay, thanks. Okay. Okay, can you say it too, please?
Yes, 773-559-1022.
773-559-1022.
Yes.
Okay, so do I not even have to go to his apartment for his Zoom? Can I just call in and finish? Or is it better to try his apartment first?
Well, as long as you can see the charts, yeah, as long as you can see the charts and speak to the charts, that may work. So for example, if you log in via Zoom, via your cell phone. Oh, okay, that did it. She's out of power. Okay, so in the meantime, what are your thoughts? So how many Super Bowl players, Super Bowl watchers we have in the room? Who's placed a bet? I'm sure at least one of you have thought about it.
I'm just fascinated about all the oppositions and what she saw in the other team with all the Aquarius.
Okay, okay.
Nope, that's for me. But what I thought was interesting was who was it? There was somebody in LA, I think, has the sun or Jupiter kind of where the sun would always be conjunct the sun or Jupiter around Super Bowl time, which seems like he would be a really good person to have.
Yeah, all those people that were in the beginning with Aquarius suns on that one team. That was astounding to see that.
Yeah, and so the Super Bowl is always this time of year, right? I mean, this one is a week later than normal, but so all of those people would, you'd think, have a really good shot at everything Super Bowl oriented.
I think if we text her the link, we can get her back, Omari. So text me the link or because her phone is still working.
Okay.
Let's see if we can find the chart that we're both talking about, Susan.
It's for Matthew Stafford.
Oh, is that who it was?
Well, that's the quarterback for the Rams. And I think it's the one right before this.
Matthew
Right?
Stafford?
Yeah, he's got the sun, at 18 Aquarius. Saturn's going to be conjuncted during the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and with the sun conjunct the sun and Mercury this year. If it was a week earlier, like it normally is, or like it has been in the past, maybe this will be permanent. Maybe they've decided this will be the new time. The sun would have been like partile conjunct his sun.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying that, like you said, a quarterback with the sun at this degree of Aquarius might just do really well all the time in the Super Bowl.
Is there a part of the chart that's specific to football players?
That's an interesting question because, Andrea does a lot more research on individual athletes. I mean, I like to do teams, and but I'm thinking it's probably Mars and Jupiter. Is that there's a strong emphasis on those for football specifically. I see it as like a Mars game, whereas like baseball is more of a Venus game and basketball is a Uranus game. So I think a strong athlete with an overabundance of Mars energy is going to be probably drawn to football.
So he also has Mars sextiling that his sun and his Mercury, because his Mars and his Saturn are both in Sagittarius. Very interesting chart. And how tight all of these football players, they have a lot of stelliums, which I was surprised to see.
Yeah, I've never looked at Jimmy Garoppolo's chart before, and I live in the Bay Area, and yeah, he's the one, the 49ers quarterback. I thought, wow, it totally explains it, what's going on with that guy. The way she described him as a poster boy for the Uranus Saturn square and all the injuries he's been having. With, that it's all like opposing and squaring his stellium and Scorpio.
Let's go back to
Okay.
his chart. There you go. There's
Yes,
Jimmy's
I'm
chart.
here. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
yay.
Yay, thank you. Thanks for bearing with me. This Neptune opposed Sun and Mercury. Yeah. So please tell me what we're up to. And of course, I want to take questions and so on.
Tom
Oops.
Brady's retirement.
Yes. Okay, then. So as I was saying earlier, and let me get his chart, Tom Brady, Grand Trine in fire, and we have access to his birth time. So I'm going to get his chart, and some of you are probably already familiar with it. Okay, August 3rd, 1977, 11:48 a.m., San Mateo, California. So Grand Trine in fire, we've got Moon in Aries, Sun conjunct Saturn in Leo, and Neptune in Sagittarius. So, as you may know, personally and professionally, Saturn is in Aquarius. So, Saturn opposed the Sun, that's personal, and then that can be kind of some low energy delay, doesn't mean denial, but certainly frustrating. And then the Saturn opposition is a midlife crisis transit, kind of one of the endings of it. We got the Neptune square, the Pluto square, the Uranus opposition, and then we have the Saturn opposition. So again, as I mentioned, Giselle is into astrology. So it doesn't surprise me that she was kind of on him to kind of retire. It's like the last of the midlife crisis transits. She also makes him protection necklaces, and she's a Cancer. Did you have a chance, Pamela, to do her chart as well that I sent to you?
Yes, I have it up next.
Yes, excellent. So we'll get to that shortly. So Leo, okay, so Uranus squaring his Sun in Taurus. So Uranus square the Sun, expect the unexpected, needing freedom. Uranus's middle name is freedom. It's liberation. It's like the Tower card in Tarot. So part of that really needs freedom and to kind of break out of old routines. And the Saturn opposition, reaping the rewards, yet extra responsibilities. And a lot of people sometimes change careers during their midlife crisis. It used to be that stereotype, the young, the sports car, the red sports car, taking off with someone younger. But now, on a more spiritual, deeper level, we see that is, a chronological transit, the Saturn opposition. And the Saturn square Uranus, again, he's kind of another poster child of that Saturn opposed Sun, which can be kind of a little depressing. All he's ever known is football, but he does the TB12, if you're familiar with that. This whole health food, you can sign up for his website, emails, all these different protein drinks and how to sleep better and exercise better. So it's not like he doesn't have other irons in the fire, but, football was just so huge to him. And then Jupiter is going to go into his 6th house of work, health, and service. So to me, Jupiter makes things bigger, more, and better, and there's some new opportunities. So that's Jupiter transiting his 6th house, and that will be in March, I think, and it'll trine his midheaven at 20 Cancer. So he's basically a Leo, Aries moon, and the pretty boy Libra rising. That's what they say. And then transiting Jupiter, trine Uranus, new opportunities, both personal and professional. And mostly Uranus square Sun. But here's the thing, and as I mentioned, Giselle is into astrology. He announced his retirement, and this is very, very important to note. February 1st, 2022, I just, rectified about 3 p.m. in Tampa, Florida. He's with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers now. Now, if you know astrology, why would you make an announcement of this magnitude when Mercury is retrograde? Okay, it was Lunar New Year, Year of the Tiger. We can make a case for that. He had some wind on his back, at his back. Maybe the Mercury retrograde, he has an out. And I'd be curious to hear other people's opinions. But to me, that's sort of an out. It's like, I might change my mind. And as you may know, if you're following him, quote, never say never, unquote. That's his latest vacillation. And he does have Mars in Gemini. So, and Jupiter in Gemini. So not to, give Geminis a bad rap, but they can change their mind. The sign of the twins. So that's something, that I think he may have purposely announced during Mercury retrograde to give himself some wiggle room and an out, because now he's going back and forth. But here's the thing, Giselle is a Cancer, and she's very overprotective. We know and love our Cancers, but part of their personality. Excuse me for a moment. Okay, is protective and a little overprotective at times, a little smothering. So the fact that she has a lot of planets in Cancer, she worries about them. And what I like for their compatibility, before I forget, his Venus in Cancer is a very nice omen for being with someone who's a Cancer. And that's like natural friends, like a yin yang. So even though you wouldn't think Leo and Scorpio, that's a square, not Scorpio, Leo and Cancer wouldn't necessarily have a lot in common. His Venus in Cancer is nice. I think she has, I didn't have a chance to print her chart out, but I could probably get it. What was it? Scorpio, Moon, and Cap Rising?
Yes.
Yeah. So I can, it's actually letting me, I think it's letting me look at my charts in the software program, just not online.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Andrea, I would, maybe with the Mercury retrograde, retirement is another form of resignation. So at one point he signed the contract. Now he's, is submitting, his resignation in the form of retirement.
Interesting.
So
yes, I could see that, the RE words.
Yeah. So I think to resign or retire under Mercury retrograde, I can see that as a good thing. And in some individuals who retire from some positions, they may return in the future as a part-time consultant for a project.
Oh, and I could see him doing that. That's a good point.
I can see him with his name, with his brand name in the profession and his years of experience. His name is on the short list for the next news sports television personality, whether that's with the NFL proper or some other radio show or what have you.
Good call. He's a Leo.
Yes, and as you know, the king of the zodiac, they thrive on appreciation and recognition. So he's not going to fade into the background. That's a good point, Omari, and kind of go away. He's got that flamboyant, kind of radiant personality. I always say commanding and demanding for Leo energy. So I think that, then he talks about his family, Venus in Cancer, wanting to spend more time with his kids. We can make a case for that. But I think your point is well taken, that he can kind of morph into other opportunities in the sports field or health and nutrition. He's got a lot of irons in the fire. So I can understand that. And then, what do you think, the going back and forth, not just Mercury retrograde, but it's like an illustrious career. What was like over 25 years and Super Bowl MVPs, and how many rings did he get? There's not a whole lot more to achieve. But he's not the type to stay home either with a grand trine in fire.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what he ends up doing. But I thought it was, kind of stole a little of the thunder of the playoff championship games when he announced that, and then he backtracked a little. But I think that makes sense, that you can retire and rethink when Mercury's retrograde, and also, have some ambivalence. I think that's par for the territory.
Yeah, I think in other conversations off screen, I'm sure he has set up some other opportunities, or others have approached him to consider other opportunities. So football is in his blood, and being that he is a sun sign Leo, he has to shine, wants to be seen. He has to hold court in some way. That's important for Leo. So he'll just reinvent himself in some other vein with the sport, but it won't be on the field.
Yes. And are you familiar with the TB12 organization he's got going?
No, I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah, you can Google that. It's quite elaborate. It's really a lot about health and holistic healing and natural supplements and working out. He's got quite a niche there, and his name, carries that recognition. So clearly he's not going to just stay at home and, hang out with the kids. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but the TB12 kind of suits him for, staying in the sports world and helping and healing, the Venus in Cancer and nurturing, kind of doing something spiritual to, make money. Neptune in the second. Now he's certainly a nice example of Neptune in the second house natally. Not everyone has that luck. And he has a Mars-Neptune opposition in his chart. So, the first hit I got, if I didn't know he was Tom Brady, is like, he's a superstar athlete with a Mars-Neptune opposition, which goes to show you we're more than just like one opposition in our chart. I think the Grand Trine in fire serves him really well. And to get back to the midlife crisis transit, the Saturn opposition is big. And I think Giselle is 1980. Is that correct, Pamela? She's quite a bit younger?
Yes, she's 1980.
Yeah. And she's got, I think, the Cap rising, Scorpio moon. So, she's definitely intense. But he's got Uranus in the first house. I mean, that's interesting right there. Kind of, different, a little bit of a rebel. But his sun's in the 10th. And I think that's important to note. And Sun conjunct Saturn in the 10th, career is his life. That's really important. And, his dad speaks a lot in the Bay Area. He's a big ardent supporter of him. And, Tom grew up in the Bay Area, like the 49ers. But I think the Saturn opposition is really kind of double checking your vocation, your life path, your security, your karma. If you're frustrated, making a change, people change careers during the Saturn opposition. And certainly, if he was my client, I'd say get a lot of rest and recreation, bones, knees, teeth, that kind of thing. A Saturn transit can make you a little extra sensitive to that. But, I think his Grand Trine in fire, how shall I say, puts him in good standing for robust health. And Venus conjunct Jupiter in the 9th, that's nothing to sneeze at for his finances. I think that outweighs Neptune in the second natally. Venus conjunct Jupiter. Venus, love, money, abundance. Jupiter, expansion. And then, Saturn's exalted in the 10th house, meaning it feels very comfortable there. And Sun conjunct Saturn is really ambitious, kind of hard on himself. So again, the Sun Saturn in the 10th house of career is everything on some levels. And then the Saturn opposition, which is the midlife crisis transit, that's chronological, but also Saturn opposed Sun. He's been having that on and off for the past year. So he's been really rethinking. But again, he has other irons in the fire. So if he's feeling a little tedious, or he needs more patience and perseverance. It's just not a high physical energy time when Saturn opposes the sun, and your ambitions may be thwarted or delayed. And they might receive criticism or disapproval. So spiritually, Saturn transits can be used for meditation, introspection, contemplation, growth of personality. You use it or it uses you. But can also be, skeletal system, spines, lower back, heart to some degree, problems with those in authority. So I think this would be a good time for him to think about retiring and just doing something different. And sometimes Saturn transits can indicate the father or the father having some health challenges. But new endeavors, they might not bear fruit just yet, but I think you made a good point that they will in the future. So we're not too worried about Tom Brady, that's for sure. But it's interesting, the retirement transits and the Grand Trine in fire. And I think I have a little bit more to add about his transits, because it's just really nice to have an accurate birth time. So I just kind of really think that's really important, because then you see the accurate house placements. So just to explain that for a moment to people that are listening. Now we know, he's got a Sun-Saturn conjunction, but it's in his 10th house of career. He's 11:48 a.m. in San Mateo. So that really helps a lot. And Jupiter trining his midheaven, again, just to mention, end of February, March, new activities. Jupiter going into his 6th house in March as well. So that's a nice confluence. New opportunities for work, health, and service. So that can really work to his favor. And we had irritability. Mars squared his moon January 31st. That was right before the announcement of the retirement. I think he was battling a little with Giselle. That's just kind of my intuitive hit. Mars was squaring his moon January 31st till February 3rd, and then he announced the retirement February 1st. So I think they might have went back and forth a few times on that. And then Mars.
What's amazing, Andrea, is the fact that since she does know astrology, the Mars and the moon are exactly at 6 degrees, and then the Jupiter is exactly trining the Uranus. His natal Uranus is at 7 degrees Scorpio, and the transit Jupiter is at 7:24 Pisces. It's just, that's too coincidental to not be timed, unless it's, a coincidence, but I don't think it is.
No, I'm glad you mentioned that, Pamela. Believe me, she's quite devoted to astrology. And just as an aside for all the people out there that might be a little insecure, she actually asked my colleague to look at Bridget Moynihan's chart, which was, Tom wasn't married to her, but he has a son with her. And it was like, wow, the most, one of the most beautiful, wealthiest women in the world wanted to know Bridget Moynihan's compatibility with Tom, not just, how they get along around their son. It's like, well, I feel a little better about myself. But I think that's a good point about Giselle's chart. Can you say that again, please?
It's in Tom Brady's chart, like the day that he's doing the retirement. Jupiter is at 7:24 Pisces, and his natal Uranus is at 7:50 Scorpio.
Yes, Jupiter trine Uranus. And new developments.
The same time period for the 3 p.m. The transit Mars is 6 degrees Capricorn, and his moon is at 6 degrees Aries.
Oh, so I probably had that written down. Mars square moon, the irritability, and then the other part that you mentioned?
The Uranus Jupiter trine, that explains why the media went complete. It was a surprise to everyone.
Right.
And it was a big, giant surprise. It was all over the news. I don't even watch football, but I was like, oh, Tom Brady, everybody knows who he is.
Yes. And I think that's a good point. He stole some of the thunder, Pamela, from, the championship game and that the 49ers lost, all of a sudden it was all about Tom Brady, right? It's like, wait a minute. There was like, championship games, teams got eliminated, and now it's like Tom Brady is planning to retire, and then it's like, will he or won't we? But yeah, that's right. Mars trine Uranus. Mars sextile Uranus February 25th, acting more on impulse, and Sun opposed Sun. And I'd like to hear some feedback on that. The Sun was literally opposing his Sun in Leo.
Oh my gosh, it's another direct hit.
Yeah. And everyone, different thoughts on that. But sometimes it's like your half birthday, but it's not like the most powerful time of year. But I'd be curious to hear what people have to say about that.
Well, I just want to go back to speak to that. Certainly, I guess that's his wife. Someone is certainly using astrology, and he's making major decisions based on the planets. Due to these specific alignments, I don't think it's a coincidence.
Right. Exactly right. And that was like my point, that the timing, it would be like, wait a minute, Mercury's okay. But like you said, that can be good for reviewing, rethinking, retiring. So he's definitely, as far as I know, Giselle is my colleague's client. She didn't say Tom Brady is, but I get a sense that Giselle, being Giselle and kind of a nurturing, worrisome Cancer, probably channels some of the information to Tom. Now, whether he listens or not, that remains to be seen.
He probably does.
I would think he does, because that's a good point, Amari, because he purports to be kind of spiritual. I mean, I know she is, but I think he does listen.
Okay.
And he does tune in, and, not just to, placate her. I think he really does tune in and want to know auspicious times to make these type of just huge life passage moments.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we have a question in the chat pod.
Oh, yes. Go ahead,
asking,
please.
Are there any more specifics around the Super Bowl?
Oh, okay. Let's get back to the Super Bowl. Well, I'm glad you asked, because what I just remembered that I forgot is the home field advantage to the Rams playing at SoFi Stadium.
Which chart is that? I'll go back to the chart. The LA
Rams
Rams
please
chart?
do. LA Rams, correct. In Inglewood, California, 3:30 p.m., February 13th, 2022.
Am I there, Omari?
Yes.
LA Rams natal chart?
Yes.
Okay.
This is this is LA Rams and the Super Bowl 56. Yes, and
would you just want
yes.
the Super Bowl chart?
No. This is it. This is the LA Rams natal chart. The inner wheel, the middle wheel is the Super Bowl chart, and the outer wheel is secondary progressions for the LA Rams.
So, happy to elaborate more on the, let me just get the Super Bowl chart. Okay. And that was, I'm going to just put the phone down for a moment. I have charts everywhere, as you can imagine. Okay. Mcvay, and we have Alex Smith. Okay, Super Bowl. Okay. So, as I said before, the Rams will have home field advantage because that is where they play at SoFi Stadium. And whether they get to, choose first or something, that's different, but it is their home field. And I do like home field advantage, so that I will mention to address that question to start off with. And then we have the stellium in Capricorn that we've been dealing with or laboring under for quite a while now. So the Mercury-Pluto conjunction I thought was very intense for communication and intense focus. And again, Mercury is out of retrograde and coming out of its shadow February 25th, but for all intents and purposes, it's no longer retrograde. Nothing is retrograde anymore right now. So we have the Sun in Cancer, which is right before the full moon in Leo. So we're going to have a full moon shortly. I think, let me double check that. Thereafter, okay, let's see what we've got. Okay, February 13th. I have this really neat book called Cosmic Window. It actually has your transits for that day. Okay, full moon is the 16th, 8:48 a.m. PST, 28 Leo. So it's right before the 13th is before the full moon. So the moon's waxing to full. Mercury goes into Aquarius on the 14th, and it's Valentine's Day. How about that? The moon is not void of course, it's in Cancer. And sometimes void of course can bring unexpected results, kind of like a mini Mercury retrograde. And yeah, it's kind of on the cusp of the full moon. So emotions can run high. The moon's exalted in Cancer, so that can be a pleasant emotionality. And Sun conjunct Saturn, kind of serious, but I think the Super Bowl always falls around, February. And if the Sun's in Aquarius, you'll get the Saturn that's in Aquarius now. It's not always. Uranus in the 10th, I thought might be interesting. A little expect the unexpected. But I'm definitely liking Moon opposed Pluto for some emotional intensity. Because, I mean, it's a Super Bowl, we want to see emotions at a fever pitch and intensity. So that's really, that. And then the Jupiter-Neptune in Pisces later in the year, as you know, I believe in April, they'll be conjunct, which can be a very spiritual time. But mostly, that midheaven of the Rams chart, if I can harken back to that, because that really jumped off the page. And that was when Cesar suggested doing the incorporation chart, because transiting Saturn in the Super Bowl chart conjuncts the midheaven in the LA Rams chart. So I think, it's like these charts don't quite occur in a vacuum. I think it's very important to see the connections and the confluence of energy between the two.
And Andrea, later on, when Jupiter conjuncts Neptune, it will be in their 10th house in the incorporation chart.
Oh, nice point. Okay. Jupiter, Neptune, let me get back to their
And this is supposed to be some kind of fantastic transit. So I would think that this would highlight maybe a fantastic win for them. So is this, all of this is the one that you're picking, is the LA Rams?
Yes, I am picking the LA Rams for several reasons. And the, that was a good addition. The Super Bowl chart and the transits that are happening in the LA Rams incorporation chart. Just getting back to all these charts. You can hear me rustling around with the papers. Sorry about that. And Stafford's chart, again, Saturn conjunct the Sun is, I don't perceive that necessarily as negative. You do hard work, you get rewarded. So I thought that could be positive. And the coach, I really thought, again, these are young coaches. I really thought Sean McVay's chart looks strong. You want to have a Mercury return when you're strategizing a Super Bowl. You want to have transiting Sun to your Jupiter. You want to win. You want to be in a good mood. So I really liked that, short-term transits. So basically what I do, to answer your question again, I micromanage with the quicker moving planets, Sun, Mercury, Venus, Mars to some extent, and then macro manage with the outer planets that move more slowly and retrograde. But progress Sun to Jupiter, nice work, Sean, on ordering that up from the universe. That's pleasant around the Super Bowl. And then the Mercury return. So you got a little double, like an ice cream cone with 2 scoops of your favorite ice cream as an analogy. And then Chiron sextile Chiron, if I can put another log in the fire, about why I'm thinking the Rams chart looks stronger. That's, an outer planet transit, but doors open, good fortune. Chiron, the wounded healer in harmonious aspect to natal Chiron, that can be quite positive. So I'm just liking even Sun Square Mars. Guess what? You have to get your dander up. You're coaching in the Super Bowl. So I'm liking the Mercury return for strategizing for Mcvay, Mercury conjunct the Sun, Sun to Jupiter. I mean, he might overextend a bit. You know, you can't have the rainbow without the rain. Sometimes Jupiter makes you overextend a bit. But outside of that, you know, I think it's very positive for him. And then Mercury, you know, to Venus later on. Like I always say, I kind of, you know, look forward to like, what will the parade look like? Oh, Mercury conjunct Venus. Won't he be a happy camper? So his chart, inherently positive, again, based on the information I have without an accurate birth time, and Stafford also looks positive. And again, Saturn, you know, when you reframe that as something inherently positive in terms of getting the accolades after putting the hard work in. Okay, are there any other questions? Oh, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I was just checking the chat pod. I do not see.
Oh yeah, no, sorry. I get nervous when I don't hear something.
Yes, so I didn't hear any. There are no questions in the chat pod. Did anyone have a question at this time? Even feel free to use the microphone.
Andrea, if you can hear me, my question is about Tom Brady's chart, and he's such an intense competitor. I don't. Competitor is not even the right word. The fact, you know, there's so many times we've seen him on TV where his team is losing, and then you see him. He gets that look in his face, like, yeah, he's going to take care of business, and he's got that kind of hawk face persona, which to me is not consistent with Libra rising. There's something else. I don't. Yeah. How do you explain just that the intensity that Tom Brady look that's just kind of like unmatchable?
Yes,
what do you see in this chart?
Yes, please let me know who's asking the question.
It's
me.
Pardon me?
Oh, it's me, Cesar, your friend.
Oh, thanks. I thought your voice was familiar, and it sounded like you're familiar with the local hometown Tom Brady. Yes. So what I would attribute that to a couple of things. First things first, the Grand Trine in fire. Okay. I really think you can get a lot of mileage out of that. And again, what planets are involved? The Sun, your basic vitality. Neptune, his spirituality. Moon in Aries. I got Moon in Aries. You know, we kind of go for it and get irritated if we don't win. So I think the Grand Trine in fire really gives him that get up and go. And it's the Sun Saturn in Leo also, Cesar. That's like, it's not good enough. There's more to do. I mean, he's Tom Brady, but, you know, he won last year, and it's just that really wanting to accomplish even more. And I think the Grand Trine in fire. And then you want to see what aspects are bringing to the Grand Trine in fire. Is it making him more fiery? Is it mellowing him out a little? But it's like, you know, a pinball machine when you have a Grand Trine. You know, when you get transit to one planet, it lights them all up. So Saturn was trining his moon, was trining his Neptune, then it opposed his Sun and Saturn in Leo. So that's always, you know, interesting to see. It's like a package deal when you have a Grand Trine in any of the elements. But back to your point, fire would be energy, assertion, a lot of passion, vitality, adventure. Grand Trine in Earth. A Grand Trine is a gift. It's basically three planets talking harmoniously upon each other, with each other. So Grand Trine in Earth is very earthy, practical, productive, can be a little stubborn. Grand Trine in water, that would be Pisces, Cancer, Scorpio, very emotional, intuitive, super sensitive. Then Grand Trine in air, that would be Gemini, Aquarius, and Libra. So the mind, the intellect, leading a life of the mind. So wherever a Grand Trine is, to me, I see as a gift. And then the element of the Grand Trine, I see as how they express that gift. And when they get transits, last but not least, the whole trine gets lit up. It's like a package deal. So if you're getting, you know, a harmonious transit, nice, they're all coming along for the ride. If it's something more challenging, then they all kind of go along and have to deal with it as well.
Fascinating.
Yes, I really think he seems to have that grand trine. There's always more to do with his chart. And, it'll be interesting to see the never say never, but I think Omari made an excellent point as well about retiring. Because in my Mercury retrograde bookmarks, I always say it's auspicious to do our things: rethink, regroup, redo, reflect. So you could make a case for that in terms of mechanical items, travel, technology, not so much, but certainly rethinking and reviewing. And the fact that Giselle has a personal astrologer, I'm sure she imparted some wisdom there, and he listened to it, although maybe he clashed with it at first with Mars squaring his moon. But, she's got Scorpio moon, Capricorn rising. She might rule the roost. She's intense.
Yeah, let's see. We have a few comments coming into the chat pod.
Yes.
Let's see. Okay, so this is from Kim. When looking at the Rams chart, specifically the inception of the team, are you using St. Louis or LA?
Good point. Because as you may know, yes, they moved to St. Louis and back to LA. They originally incarnated, and again, thanks to Cesar's incorporation chart, in Los Angeles. And that date was April 12, 1936, 7:45 a.m. So I'm looking at the Los Angeles chart.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's
actually they originally incorporated in Cleveland, and they moved to Los Angeles, I think sometime in the 50s. It's been a while since I rectified this chart and all this, but I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, it was Cleveland where they started. I don't know the history of the NFL as well as I do history of baseball, but they've had a journey. It's all that Sag moon. They don't sit still.
But then they were right. I mean, that's the adventure of them. But then they did April 12th move to LA, 1936.
No, that's the birthday I've got for them originally in Cleveland, and then I've kept the same date and have them move, and just change the longitude and latitude for a different location. It's like when you move across country, you get yourself a new chart, same date of birth, but just
right.
You could do a relocation chart for that.
Right. Yeah. Like Jim Maynard used to do a lot of work with relocation astrology. You get different ley lines, a Neptune line in California that you won't have in New York. Yeah.
Okay. And Cesar, would you type the information about that baseball book in the chat pod for us?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes. That's an excellent book.
And
here, let me look at the cover.
Okay, so Susan, he's showing the cover now. He's going to type that information in the chat pod for you and anyone else who wants it. Andrea, I have a question actually a comment. I certainly like the fact that you make it a point to look at the transits a few days after the event. Yeah, I did that last year. I wrote an article for OPA in their Career Astrologer magazine about vocational astrology. And I focused on the Grammys of 1986, and I focused on Whitney Houston, highlighting her birth chart progressions and transits for the 86 Grammys. And it just so happens that the day after the Grammys, if I remember correctly, the transiting sun made a conjunction to her natal ascendant the day after the Grammys. And so I'm just sharing that to really highlight that if you want to get even more insight, take a look at the transits, I would say 2, 3, 4, 5 days after the event. And if it speaks to being highlighted in the news with first house stuff or 10th house stuff, then it's a possibility that maybe that person will win the award, or that team will win first place or the championship or something to that effect, as a possibility, not as a fact.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree. And I can't remember when I started kind of looking ahead by a few days. And it just like really seemed to resonate. It really seemed to fit. It's like, okay, well, who's going to celebrate? Who's going to be a little sad? Who's going to walk away a little dejected? Who's going to get ready for the Super Bowl parade? I think I started doing that when I was doing sports astrology for the Giants, and they were winning in even years. It was like, okay, let's see, Tim Lincecum, okay, Gemini. Oh, well, Neptune squaring his sun. That might be a bit of a delay. And then he ended up like, no one even knows. He didn't retire, but he's not with a team. And he's kind of an outlier. And I just looked like after the World Series, what would happen. And sure enough, there was a lot of confusion. But I really think it's very important to kind of get, it's not like a cheat sheet, Omari, but it's sort of like, okay, let's project ahead. That's what astrology does. And, that's a thing, like what's organically happening right after the Super Bowl. It'll just be interesting to see what transits are conspiring. And again, for the Rams, and it just looked like they're going to be happy campers. And again, without an accurate birth time, they seem to check a lot of the boxes.
Wow, we've got a lot of messages in the chat.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So let's take a look at that.
Yes, I'm
okay.
happy to be of service.
So Susan Goodell, feel free to use your microphone. Susan Goodell is a big Chicago's fan here. And Cesar has a book about the curse on the Cubs. Cool.
Oh,
yeah.
Well,
I'm excited to get that book. I'll order it soon. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you a little bit about the Cubs. They have the sun in Pisces and the moon in Taurus, and that wispy, sad quality of the Cubs that lasted for so long is very consistent with Pisces sun.
Okay.
I was so happy when they finally won. I'm a big Eddie Vedder fan from Pearl Jam, and seeing him like celebrate at the parade, it was like, good things come to those who wait. Capricorn Eddie Vedder. That was fun.
Yeah. So Andrea, we have one question in the chat pod. Can you discuss the Bengals chart after the game if you have it? So what does their chart look like 2 to 3 days after the game?
Oops.
Okay, let's get back to the Cincinnati Bengals chart. All right, and let's see. I haven't done as much work, truth be told, on the Bengals chart, but let me get to it. Trey Lance, okay. LA Rams. Yeah, that Joe Burrow, he's a piece of work. Okay. Cincinnati Bengals, let's repeat that again. It is May 24, 1967. Just go with 12 p.m., Cincinnati, Ohio. Okay, so let's see. After Saturn will be going, it's in the 6th house. It'll be going in the 7th house by transit. So that's something to think about. It incarnated in the 60s, as you know, with the Uranus-Pluto conjunction in Virgo. Venus at 16 Cancer. So Pluto is 26, not opposing it. I think the Leo rising is interesting, though. 17 degrees, that puts Saturn at the descendant. So that's a little heavy energy when you get a planet at an angle, the angular 1st house, 7th house, 4th house, 10th house axis. So I would say angular planets have more importance and more intensity. So I would say an angular Saturn in the 7th house is kind of serious and a little bit heavy. But I should double check with Cesar if 12 p.m. was kind of rounded off, or is that an actual incorporation time?
No, it was rounded off. So I'm not sure I would put a lot of stock in those degrees of the goals.
Okay, that's just something to think about.
I have not rectified that chart. So the Rams chart, I'd swear by the axis on the Rams chart, but not this one. Yeah,
and I love that transiting Saturn to the Rams natal chart, again, bringing rewards. So to me, again, to get back to the question, yes, I look ahead, but not so much with the incorporation chart, although obviously we just did, but more to the individual players chart, the marquee players. which is, the QB and the coach. In the interest of time, we just did that. But there's Cooper Kupp, and, he's a Gemini, and all the other wide receivers, running backs. There's a lot of moving parts there. But I look at the marquee players just to kind of keep it simple, sometimes with sports astrology, and kind of cut to the chase. So it's, the football, the quarterbacks, the coaches, baseball, the starting pitcher, who's in the bullpen, who's batting cleanup. So, people can surprise you too, but that's always interesting, more the individual chart and what's happening, because we have more control about that, even without an accurate birth time. We'll have everything except the degree of the moon, which changes a degree every 2 hours. And we won't have an ascendant or rising sign. And the houses are solar houses.
Okay. So in your opinion, who has the better chart for Sunday?
I like the Rams. I think everything else being equal, the home field advantage keeps kind of coming up. Matthew Stafford, Saturn conjunct the Sun. I'm just going to put the phone down for a moment and get
okay.
this, transit book. And Saturn is a culmination, and the Sun's your basic energy and vitality. So contrary to other people's popular beliefs, Saturn conjunct the Sun can bring rewards. So I think Saturn conjuncting his Sun, he got him this far, is really good with extra responsibilities and a turning point.
Yes.
His direction, his goals, his purpose. This is some pressure, yeah, but this is a lot of focus and intensity, and he needs not to be so hard on himself with Saturn conjunct the Sun. But I don't really get the nature of Saturn in this instance is to delay, deny, and restrict. I think he's really concerned with his goals and his plans, and he's looking for success and achievement in the present. So is it quick results and gratification? No. But if I always say, if you did the crime, you do the time. But with Saturn, if you worked really hard, then you get the accolades. So I really think that it's a big turning point and a crossroads in his career in terms of accountability and responsibility, his destiny. Saturn's not a lightweight planet. It's a cosmic cup, it's father time. So it's a big transit, and it's once every 29 years that you have Saturn conjunct your Sun. So I want to also mention that is not a very frequent transit. And it does last on and off for a year plus.
For his chart, Andrea, for Matthew Stafford's chart, he has Venus in his natal chart in Pisces. And he also has the North Node in Pisces. And it's just being that this is Neptune and Venus that are going to be conjoined in Pisces, and shortly after Jupiter will be there. It
Jupiter,
seems
Neptune.
really magical for him.
Nice word for Neptune, Pamela.
It's a lot of positive stuff, bunched up together.
Excellent point. Yeah, I really, I like Neptune transits, and they can be magical. They can also be somewhat confusing and deceitful. It depends, but I really do like what you just shared about kind of this like aura about him, like a magical glow.
Now, this is a player or a coach?
He is a starting quarterback for the LA Rams.
So if they win the Super Bowl, it is quite possible he could get some fantastic money deal out of this, and that would correspond with all these money planets together.
Exactly, and MVP, most valuable player. They award that after the Super Bowl to the winning team and quarterback. So that could be a nice omen.
Is that what you see? He'll be MVP from these
charts? He has a good chance to be MVP. I haven't looked at the rest of the roster, obviously. But I do like, that Saturn quality, Sun sextile Mars for high energy, Mars sextile Pluto for power, Jupiter trine Pluto for persistence towards his goals, Pluto sextile Venus, which is creative. So I'm really looking, beyond the Saturn. I know I kind of, made a big deal about Saturn conjunct the Sun because it's once every 29 years, but there's a lot of other moving parts there. And I like what you shared about those Neptune transits, because I think that has this aura and this magical glow. And then he gets Jupiter conjunct his Venus, I think, April, May. Let me double check. He has Venus in Pisces. Yeah, he sure does. So how about that for some magic continuing?
I put
You
his
see-
name down. I don't know who he is, but I'm definitely going to look him up and see what happens to him.
Oh, yeah. No, Jupiter, Venus. I mean, that's like the two planets that rule money, love, romance, good fortune, just really happy. Once every 12 years, Pamela, I should mention, Jupiter conjuncts Venus, or Jupiter conjuncts our natal planets. So it's not very often, and he's on the cusp of that.
I just
So
think this is
yeah.
it's a with the Jupiter and Neptune, Jupiter Neptune conjunction in Pisces hasn't happened since 1856. So anytime I can
right.
see it in somebody's chart that they're going to have something that's very close, I've got
Mhm.
like a list of names. I want to
Oh, do
watch
you?
I want to watch their charts and see what happens to them. So
Oh, send them to me. I'm like that. I'm kind of obsessive. You know, I live, breathe, and eat astrology. And it's like, oh, okay, he's got Neptune conjunct Venus. He's got Jupiter there soon, too. Wonder what's going to happen. Yeah, I mean, you know, people's life choices are really good teachers, and as are our own. So that would be interesting. I'm glad you mentioned that, Venus in Pisces, because Venus has to be close to the sun. It's either the same sign, the sign before it, or the sign after it.
Mhm.
So it makes sense. He's Aquarius with Venus in Pisces. That also softens him up, makes him a little more emotional, romantic. His wife, I gave him a big hug when they won. I don't know if you saw that, but he was like, "Oh, thanks, honey." You know, it was just kind of sweet.
Omari, what do you think's going to happen with that?
Oh, I don't know. I was listening. I don't know. I have homework to do tomorrow, so I can't watch the game. But I'm gonna have my eyes on the LA Rams.
Yeah, it's on Sunday, the game. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Super Bowl Sunday, and you know they'll be talking about it for weeks on end.
Correct.
But are people leaning towards the Rams or the Bengals?
Oh, I don't know. Susan, I know you're a Buccaneers fan. What about you?
No, actually, my Buccaneer email comes from my dad.
From your dad. Okay.
Wishing he could sell his corn at $1 an ear.
Okay. Got it. Got it.
That's
Okay.
clever. That's funny.
Okay. So are there any questions before we conclude the lecture for the evening?
Yeah, I have a kind of a comment or a question. I'm not sure how that would come across, but you know, Sue and I sometimes look at Chinese astrology. This is the year of the tiger. The Bengals, despite all the odds, got to the Super Bowl. Now, is it possible the very fact that the Bengal Tigers, you know, could possibly, because of the year, you know, this very fortuitous new moon Chinese New Year beginning just a couple of weeks ago, propel them despite all that's been said. I hear all the astrology looking pretty good for the Rams. Could that be a wild card type situation? I don't know. Have you ever correlated some Chinese astrology with the Western?
Yes, I have. In fact, when the Bengals won, I was calling in on Ben Maller, the Fox Sport Radio. I'm the Sports Sorceress, and I said, "Oh, it's the year of the Tiger," and the Bengals won. And he kind of discounted it because they're based in LA, and it's more of a LA fan group. But I did think that had some auspiciousness to it, that it's the year of the Tiger, and they won because they certainly weren't favored.
Exactly. No, yeah. So I was just wondering if that mojo would carry them further, despite all that has been said so far today. That's just a speculation.
Yeah, no, that's, you know, it's another wild card.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, they can gain some traction there. And may I ask who's asking the question?
Oh, this is Norman Sue.
Norm, yeah. I would say that. Yeah, it's like, you know, the timing is interesting there, and that is a resonance. It's a synchronicity. It's like timing is life, life is timing. Yeah. So I think that is, important that it synchronizes with the Chinese New Year. You're the tiger. And my cat just jumped up, and she's a tabby, and she looks like a tiger.
That's an
So
omen for the Bengals.
All right.
So yeah, no, that'll
We'll
be
see.
interesting. Yeah,
Yes.
no, it should be an interesting, well-matched game.
I hope it's a good one. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Right,
tickets
let's-
are going for,
Oops.
yeah.
So Andrea, we certainly want to thank you for your time and attention. Everyone, Andrea, her contact information is on the slide to include a phone number for a voicemail, as well as her a mailing address and an email address and her areas of specialty. So please make a note of that. And we also want to share with you that on next Friday, 1 week from today, we will have Dr. Will Morris speaking with us about medical astrology. I want to share my screen with you to give you some highlights about that very quickly. So Dr. Will Morris, he's going to do the chart and medical horary, I should say, medical astrology, medical horary. And he has more than 40 years and 40,000 client experiences. He has studied contemporary with Marian March, medieval with Rob Zoller, Renaissance in the School of Olivia Barclay, and Vedic with K.N. Rao and Sanjay Rath. He has a PhD in transformative inquiry and a doctorate in acupuncture and oriental medicine. His latest book is Cycles in Medical Astrology, which puts forth a method of draconic anatomy. Dr. Will serves on the board of trustees for Kepler College and on the editorial board for Midheaven Magazine. So if you can join us next week, certainly feel free. Okay, so I want to thank each of you for your time and attention this evening. Be well, be safe, and we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you for
Take care.
the opportunity to be of
Thanks for joining
service.
us. Thank you.
Thank
It was
you.
All right.
excellent.
Bye-bye.
Bye now. Thank you,
Bye.
everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.